What is going on YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review a 2010 mixtape by Young Jeezy. Basically, this product is called The Last Laugh, and it came out in the fall of 2010. The thing about this particular product is this is a series of mixtapes that Jeezy put out in 2010. This particular product, The Last Laugh, is not a series, but it's just the concept that there are multiple projects that by Jeezy that came out in 2010, one of which was Trap or Die 2, which I reviewed back in June. Pretty good pitch for that. Then there was like a project called 1,000 Grams that came out in August of 2010, which I'm eventually going to get to. But that one's kind of more vintage, like mid 2000s Jeezy, Trap or Die, and Can't Ban the Snowman type days. As far as those Trap or Die and Can't Ban the Snowman days, as far as those pitches going to happen with it. But I look after this particular product has some new stuff in here. It's 12 songs, but all of these songs are new, so it's a good pitch to kind of get that in particular. That Jeezy was going back to his roots with certain projects like 1,000 Grams, which is pretty good pitch to kind of get that, but then he was also doing new songs at the same damn time. So it's an excellent type concept to kind of get these here. Basically, but the thing about Jeezy in 2010 was just it still continues to feel like he was in somewhat of an identity crisis around this time, just because of some of the new melds of trap music between Future, Gucci Mane, some of those type folks, like some of the originators of trap. I know like hip hop websites that talk about the folks that they feel like are the Mount Rushmore of trap music would be Jeezy, Future, T.I., and Gucci Mane. And I kind of look after it. T.I. and Jeezy were more from like the early and mid 2000s as they came up, so their particular styles were a little bit more archaic by the time you got out to 2010 when mixtapes were really booming and early 2010s trap was starting to kick off. And this particular conduit of an era for Jeezy was just kind of strange just because he just was not delivering, not in terms like he didn't have quality songs, but just in terms like that impactful song back in the days like Trap or Die the song and like Trap Star and Soul Survivor and some of those type ones. I Love It, Go Get Us, some of those type ones. My President, some of those type songs that he had in like the mid and late 2000s just were not really on full display as far out as 2010. Originally, he was going to drop TM 103 in 2010. It was supposed to come out in like the summer 2010 and even 2009 in some cases, but it kept getting delayed because the buzz songs and the singles from it just didn't catch on. Just kind of a concept I just look after. It was an awkward type era for Jeezy, but it was a good concept because he did get a series of quality mixtapes that just had the appeal. Now, I was not as much of a full-blown fan of like Trap or Die 2. I kind of felt like that was just a limp variation. It was not a very good sequel to the original Trap or Die, I'd have to say, but did have a decent amount of gems on there, but not terribly many. I question how I'd like that particular project a few months later because I really gave that like a 1 or a 2 or a 3 out of 10. Did not give it a very high score I look after, but it's just kind of the concept of this one is salingly better, and I'm glad that Jeezy kind of found his sound, just kind of giving throwback. Like this particular product has a lot of throwback songs. This particular product has a lot of throwback songs like the mid and late 2000s. Definitely if you like the USDA album. Definitely, if you like the USDA album, Cold Summer from 2007, Jeezy's Inspiration from 2006, and Jeezy's Recession from 2008 has a lot of those throwback type vibes with a little bit of like some other mid 2000s Jeezy as far as those pitches going to happen. Not terribly trendy, but it's not like that's not a problem as far as those pitches. I mean, it's not to say it's not trendy. It's just kind of the concept that in terms of something that would be like a widespread like standard mixtape ferocity that like Jeezy had in like the early 2000 or like the mid 2000s with like Streets is Watching, Trap or Die, Can't Ban the Snowman, some of those type ones. It's a good placeholder for Jeezy. It was just kind of a concept that, you know, the energy was pretty much on like it just felt like Jeezy was kind of in more of like an identity crisis around this time. But there was room. I don't feel like there wasn't room for Jeezy around this time. It's just the fact that it just felt like the lion's share of like what folks were paying attention to in like 2010, 2011, 2009 was more Waka Flocka, Gucci Mane, Future, some of those type folks, Yo Gotti, Meek Mill, Rick Ross, some of those type folks. It's just an interesting concept. But yeah, this is an excellent project. It's going to get a rave, damn near classic score. I'd have to say out of the 12 songs on this particular project, I wound up recommending all of them with the exception of 2, which is pretty much the only 2 songs I don't recommend on here would just be Last Laugh, the title track, and then Rap Game, but we'll talk about those in a little bit, but just the pitch behind it. So basically 10 out of 12. It's going to get over a 9 out of 10. I just say it's going to at least get a 9 out of 10 just to be able to say that this is really inspired Jeezy and he just felt focused, and I think just him bucking the trends and proving that he wasn't on the shelf this yet is an excellent concept. It's definitely not a project to ignore, despite the fact that it may not have like a massive smash like Trap or Die, Soul Survivor, or Go Get It, or some of those type ones. But it does have the hits. It did have some singles. So I kind of look after it. Speaking of that, there were 2 singles that were released around this time. Jeezy was continuing. Like originally, these songs were supposed to be on TM 103, like I was saying. Good concept for that. Jizzle and All White Everything were both some ones that were supposed to be on like the particular project. There were like singles. Another one was like a song he did with Plies, which I forget what that one's called, but it was like a song that he did with Plies that came out in the summer 2010. I'll probably put it in the connotation, but there were a series of singles that he dropped throughout 2010. It's like I was saying, TM103 is supposed to come out around that time, but these singles wound up on this particular mixtape. It's pretty awesome. Like apparently Jizzle was the song that got revamped later in 2011. It's a pretty good pitch for that, just because Lil Jon was originally on that. There's a variation of the song Jizzle that Lil Jon was on, so I'm interested in that particular song as far as that particular kind of turned out. But at least the original format of that song is on this mixtape. But Jizzle is basically like a late 2000s reminiscent trap bubbler. I'd had to say a pretty good concept for that. It's like, this reminds me definitely of Recession. I would feel like the song Who Dat, pretty good concept, very similar to that particular song if you missed Jeezy's Recession. Now this is not like, there's plenty of Jeezy, Recession is definitely a popular Jeezy album. I like the throwbacks to that particular album, but this album does not do that. It has some different, it's not just like leftovers from Recession, which is not a problem. I'll continue to take more doses of Recession, but I look after it just being able to say that this is a good concept of just throwbacks to other Jeezy as far as those pitches going to happen, just giving like just giving some vibes that just have the pitch of just continuing the trap sound that Jeezy helped meld in like the 2000s. Good concept. But yeah, Jizzle definitely reminds me of the song Who Dat from Recession. That was a single off that album. Good pitch for that, and it's like a good mixtape bop to kind of get here. So just basically Jeezy on some mixtape heat as far as those particular pitches kind of go along with it. Just another good highlight for that. All white, everything's pretty nice. When this says Yo Gotti on there, it's a pretty nice pitch to kind of get here. It's like a meld of like 2000s trap with like mild. This particular song is like a meld of like 2000s trap with like mild 2010s trap club turn up. I would definitely feel like All White with Yo Gotti is like a meld of 2000s trap with like mild 2010s trap club. All White Everything with Yo Gotti is like a meld of 2000s trap with like mild 2010s trap club turn up. I would definitely feel like this definitely feels like Pluto, Jeezy. But the concept of what I mean by that is, if you remember Future from like his Pluto days that he was messing with, despite the fact that Pluto came out in 2012, it's just the concept of like early 2010s mixtape Future as far as those pitches kind of happened when he was crafting like the Pluto album, and just the mixtape era of Future, just with some of that. This is a trendy song for this particular product. When I said that possibly this product wasn't that trendy, it does have some relative meld to that. It's just kind of the concept that's just in the early format of that, but it's a good concept if you like mixtape, if you like trap music from like the eras of 2010, 2011, 2012, when Future was becoming king, and some of those type pitches and some of that type sound of songs like Same Damn Time, and like Same Damn Time, and not so much Tony Montana, but some of the more type ones that are just like Same Damn Time. Can't really think of them. Turn on the Lights, some of those type pitches. Not, I mean, even though that's more softcore, I look after this kind of standard mixtape type trap from Future, just with Jeezy doing it as far as those pitches kind of happen. Just kind of a meld of like Jeezy from 2006, 2007 with like the sound of like 2011, 2012 traps. Good concept that, just like that. And then Yo Gotti's on here, so this is definitely pretty mixtape centric type one. Just a good bop to kind of get here. Has some pretty ferocious energy about it. Just real good style for that. Yeah, I'll go ahead and talk. Those are the two singles as far as those pitches going to happen. But the two songs I don't recommend on here, Last Laugh and Rap Game. Basically, both of these are just kind of more throwbacks to like the mid 2000s type sound, but they just have poor renditions of doing it. I definitely feel like there are plenty of those moments that nail it better. Like I feel like Jizzle just nailed it better. I feel like Handle My Business just nailed it better. Game Over just nailed it better. Some of those type pitches that just kind of have like those more brassy kind of standard, just feels like a bop off the USDA Cold Summer album or The Inspiration. Some of those type pitches, some of those type sound swords that kind of happens. It's kind of the concept about it, but those particular songs just nailed it better than Last Laugh and Rap Game, I'd have to say. So it's just, I mean, this is very much like a taste of like yesteryear, but it's not like that in a bad way. It does do some of that, but it's just kind of the concept that, I mean, Jeezy definitely perfected this. If folks think that Jeezy just kind of fell apart after like the recession, the actual TM103 album from late 2011 is a classic. That is a nice one. He melded that particular sound. That's basically like the recession from 2008 with like Future's Pluto sound. It's a good meld of that particularness. So Jeezy found his sound again in like the early 2010s, and he came back with that particular album, TM103. And then also like the It's the World mixtape from late 2012, when he embraced like ratchet music. So he got back to cracking pretty quickly as far as those pitches kind of happen. But this was just kind of an irregular kind of era, but it works. It's kind of some throwback stuff to look after. It Don't Stop, it's a pretty nice bop on here. It's like a jazzy kind of electro mixtape jive song, I'd have to say. Definitely like a lively social outs about this particular song. It's just like a feel good, smoke up, and kind of fraternize type song to kind of get here. Good concepts for this one. Has a real nice breeziness just about it. It's just a little bit differential for Jeezy, but I do like the concept of getting it. This is a pretty overall breezy and electro type one just to kind of get within that particular jive, but it pretty much has some radio appeal, but it's just more in like a mixtape type format. It's just a low key type one that just has some pizzazz about it that works pretty well. Pressure's On is a pretty nice one as well as like a reminiscent of like 2006's national anthem, like one of the bonus songs off of Jeezy's Inspiration from 2006. Some of those songs off the Inspiration, the deluxe, like Hood Rat, National Anthem, and I Do This, some of those type ones are a little bit difficult to track down. I think you can get them on like the iTunes deluxe, but they're actually more difficult to find nowadays just because it's just getting kind of patchy with it. But Pressure's On definitely reminds me of National Anthem. Good throwback to that. It's like a throwback kind of late 2000s trap get to it type song to kind of get. Yes, Jeezy is a motivator, obviously with this Thug Motivation series pitches like that. It's just a classic concept. It's kind of a classic concept of just getting to the money, stand up, get towards it, just get up on the grind, some of those type pitches. It's a real nice one. I like the concept of the song title, this one, just talking about the pressure's on, as if gotta snap to it, gotta bustle up and just get really stack up, get towards it. Some good concepts there. Strip Club is a pretty nice song. Do appreciate the concept of this one. It's like a woozy kind of evening relief. I would definitely feel like it's like a basic kind of gentleman's club unwind. I would feel like good get crunk and pop a brew and kind of simple a little bit on this particular song. Just a standard one. This is like a strip club song, but this is a different variable about that. It's not quite as much for ferocious kind of twerk and pop that, drop that type tone as far as those pitches kind of happen. Just kind of more laid back, just kind of hang out in the booth, some pitches like that. Just basically grab a brew, just simple kind of, possibly even have like some wings or something like that. The food that's there, some of those type pitches, just would have to say, is basic kind of marinating the club type energy as far as those pitches kind of go. So I appreciate the concept behind that one. Amen is a pretty nice one. It's like a gnarled and brooding kind of collected vicious bustle song. I would feel like this one goes pretty well with Pressure's On. It's just a little bit more just snarling as far as that particular pitch kind of goes. This is like a song that's all bullshit aside and just kind of like a local buzzer to kind of get. It's actually Amen is definitely a more concentrated type song to kind of get here. Just really, it has a little bit more effectualness towards it than standard Jeezy for the most part. I mean, most of this is a lot more frivolity, just in a more trap type sense. It's more kickback, but this one has a little bit more kind of, just feels almost like a hustle song with just a little bit more stuff on his mind as far as that pitch is kind of happen. Just kind of the concept towards it. Probably in between the song like Pressure's On and Handle My Business, some of those type ones, just a little bit more gnarled towards it, just collected, just kind of ruminating within a sense. It's a good concept for that, but just kind of more out and about, just not so much frivolity about it, but just kind of more stern, I would say. Handle My Business is a pretty nice one. It's like a mid 2000s kind of nightclub energy. I would definitely feel like this is like a basic hopper, I would have to say, and it's like a stock night out with like a vintage feel, I'd have to say. So it's a good concept for that. This one is throwback to like the USDA days, Inspiration days, some of those type pitches. Throwback to Inspiration, USDA, Cold Summer type days, I'd have to say in particular. Good concept for that. But yeah, some of these, this is just kind of the concept about it. It's just the pitch behind Jeezy kind of, in some senses, it just feels like, with rap climates, once you get past like 2 or 3 or so years, it kind of becomes more of like a history lesson. I just look at the concept, Jeezy being an architect of trap music. It's just a good concept to kind of get to some of these, just in case Trap or Die and like Can't Ban the Snowman and Streets is Watching, some of those mid 2000s mixtapes are just falling out of folks' sight. It's just a good concept to kind of get some recent type energy within that, just to be able to say that it just has some good snarl about it, just being able to say, just to reminiscent some of those type ones for folks who remember. And that's the same thing with Game Over. That's another pitch like that. It's like a vintage kind of mid 2000s trap vanilla club bop. I would definitely feel like this reminds me once again of like the USDA days from Cold Summer, and this is just good for like some sports outings, I'd say. So it's definitely a better one for like a football game, baseball game in the summer, some of those type pitches, basketball game in the fall, some of those type fares, just out and about, just kind of appreciating the summer outing type energy. Just get some drinks in your system, some of that type fare. socialize some of those type fares, I'd have to say. Definite good concept, kind of have some of those. Do appreciate some of that. Just more throwback the Jeezy's type sound, but it's just a good concept to kind of get some of these, because it's just stocking up like the hits as far as those particular kind of goes. Just get this good mixtape song, and that's the thing. Even despite the true trendiness of this product, even despite the fact that the true trendiness of this particular product may not be on full vicious kind of display, there are some ones on here like I feel like All White definitely does that pretty well. Jizzle's a pretty nice rendition of that in particular. At least the singles kind of do that, and there are some ones like Do It Again that kind of have that fare. So I'd say, but speaking of Do It Again, this is like a nice one. Speaking of Do It Again, it's like a nice one. It's like a vintage kind of 2000s Don Cannon soul and like 2010s rendition, I would have to say. Definite dope concept for that. And this is like a local kind of ruminate and errands type cut to kind of get here. Just out and about, the standard house party, just more localized type fare, house cleaning type fare as far as those pitches kind of happen. Just get standard errands done, just a standard bustle, just unwind and pitches like that. Just kind of get just a basic local get errands done as far as those pitches kind of happen. Just standard, just more residential bound as far as those pitches kind of happen with it. Just real nice one kind of get for like some vintage kind of soul just within that sense. It's like the concept of some of these. Just the overall appeal behind this is pretty good throwback to like the 2000s type days, but just this is another trendy type one to kind of get here. Just the pitch behind it. I like the fact that also Slick Pole is on here from the USDA days. It's a good pitch to kind of get him back in these particular times as far as recent as 2010. It's a good concept for that. And then Yo Gotti's on this particular song as well. So I do like the pitch behind it. It's some relative trendy type ones to kind of get here. It's a good concept for that. But these are some nice ones. This kind of concept that Jeezy, I mean, this is a very concentrated project. This is probably one of Jeezy's best in like the mixtape era from like 2000, this the early 2010s mixtape era. I'd have to say definitely underappreciated as a whole. I'd have to say just for the most part, it's just kind of definitely underappreciated as a whole for the most part. It's just kind of concept. I mean, I think that this particular project got attention, but I don't recall as to how many downloads this would have had on DatPiff back on the day if it would have had 100,000 or 250,000, some of those type pitches. I mean, Jeezy did have his popularity, but he was just getting swashed aside by folks like Future and Yo Gotti and Meek Mill and some of those type folks, and Kendrick and some of those type folks. I'd have to say ASAP Rocky is kind of the pitch behind it. But I look after still pretty popular rendition of this project here. So I want to say I don't think I've talked about Trippin', so I'm gonna get to this one as well. This is like a leery kind of haunting trap from like late 2000s days. I would definitely feel like pretty recession similar. I'd have to say it's like a good Slick Polo cameo. I would definitely feel like this is just some house party noisiness. I'd have to say it's good concept for that standard fare. I do like some of this residential bound type stuff. It's kind of here and there as far as those pitches gonna happen. Maybe not as residential bound as like Recession and like Trappin' Ain't Dead from early 2009, I had to say, but it definitely has the concept of it. This is a relatively social project. I look after it. It's more throwback within the sense, but when you look after some of these ones, there are some workshop type ones like Pressure's On, and like there was another one like that. I'd probably say Game Over is like a rel. There are some makeshift and workshop type ones like Pressure's On and Amen. There's like some relative errands type songs on here like Do It Again, some of those type pitches. I do like some of these like standard trap turn up and trendy type songs like All White, and then once again Do It Again. I'd have to say some good pitches for that. And there's like some relative residential bound type stuff like Trippin' and some of those type ones, I'd have to say. So maybe not there may not be like multitudes of it, but you do get a lot of angles covered. You do get a lot of angles covered as far as like a lot of this kind of goes. It's just basically Jeezy adapting to like the mixtape type sound of like the early 2010s with like the throwback vibes and just being able to cover some of these bases and just be able to do it. So this particular product is just Jeezy covering a bunch of bases and just being able to do it in like a residential and localized type format. I mean, you do get like the club turn up on here as far as those pitches going to happen, just in a more throwback type sense to like the mid and late 2000 sound days like Trap or Die, Can't Ban the Snowman, Cold Summer, Recession, some of those type times. And you also get that with like a little bit of trendiness and a little bit of work shift in there and a little bit of residential bounce. So it's just pretty, actually, the palette's pretty large on this particular project, I'd have to say. It's a good concept for that, despite how snappy this project particularly kind of is. But the score I'm going to give this mixtape, me recommending 10 songs out of 12 on here, I'm going to go ahead and give this mixtape like a 9.25 out of 10. I feel like that's damn near on the cusp of getting a classic. It's this kind of concept. I look after it. I really do feel like it might as well be a classic. I would almost give it like a 9.5. Maybe that would be a better score. Just would have to say, because it's a mixtape and it's free, I could probably say that it would be at like a 9.5. I'll go ahead and adjust the score to like a 9.5 out of 10 because it is pretty damn good just to be able to say that. But it is just kind of the concept I look after. Despite the quality of this particular project, I just feel like Jeezy's normal bite is just not as feral in this particular project. When you think of like the Recession just having like an album that had songs like My President and Put On and some of those type ones, Who Dat, some of that ferocity. I feel like there's good songs on here, but in terms of like the reason why you're downloading this mixtape, it kind of feels like, although this project is pretty excellent, I just feel like the breadwinner and the one that you're going to this project for may not be on full display. That might just be all white everything. That might be the concept of the song that would probably be the one to make the beeline for. But some of these just feel like more throwback and just already kind of, I mean, you have to have the already mustered energy for Jeezy on this particular product more so than trying to collect new fans as far as those pitches can happen. It's not like it's a bad product. It's getting a 9.5 out of 10, but just in terms of that, this is strange that there just was not like the breadwinner or something that could have. But yeah, that was kind of the identity crisis that Jeezy was having in 2010. But he collected his sound later. I mean, TM103 is a classic pitch just like that, but this was kind of how it went. But the Soja score as a result, I'll probably give the Soja score. I want to give the Soja score a high score just because it does have some good songs on there, but this is kind of the concept in terms of like the ones that just feel like the casual type bobs and pitches like that. I'd probably have to go ahead and give the Soja score like an 8.5 or an 8.75. I'll probably give it like an 8.75 just because the quality of it is on there. I would have to say I look after it. Like there is plenty of good songs, it's good outing, but in the throwback vibes are pretty good. But just in terms of like the casual smashes are just like the ones that just for out of nowhere, just like the ones that are going to get the continued just airplay and the ones that are going to get the continued play and the ones that just have the replay value. I feel like this is a good project, but it just feels more that you have to kind of be not so much like a hardcore fan of Jeezy, but just kind of have more effort put into it as far as actually saying it. This is not as much of a commonplace project when you think of some. I mean, obviously people are going to make a beeline for Trap or Die and probably It's the World, some of those type pitches, but just in terms of like the anchored hit, it just doesn't feel as severe on here. But it's not to say it's bad. It's it's 8.75. I look after it. Does have the quality songs. I feel like All White everything's pretty good mixtape bop to kind of get on here. Pretty good meld of like mid 2000s with like early 2010s future type stuff. Pluto, Jeezy, like I was saying. Jizzle's pretty good buzz song on here. Strip Club's pretty nice woozy type one. I feel like Pressure's On is vintage Jeezy. Trippin's vintage Jeezy. Slick Pull and Yo Gotti backup Jeezy on this particular product. So it's just some good stuff here to kind of look after, I'd have to say. But yeah, just plenty of good throwback type stuff. Just good moments. Just collective of strengths from Jeezy that you get on full display on here, just with like the sound and residential and makeshift as far as those pitches going to happen, and like some good club moments. It's a good concept. So in terms of the future, like Jeezy has put out a project. He put out a double album in late 2023. And he dropped Snowfall before that in late 2022, a mixtape that he did with DJ Drama. So some pretty good pitches. We're gonna have to get to some more of these. I'm kind of concentrating on like early 2010s mixtape Jeezy as far as those pitches gonna happen. I'm eventually gonna get to seeing it all in some of those type fairs, but this is a pretty excellent type project here, I'd have to say. Despite the fact that I had my complaints about it, don't let that deter you from the fact that this mixtape gets a 9.5 out of 10. It's very inspired here. It's just kind of the fact that Jeezy was kind of in an identity crisis, which just kind of led the fact that he's putting out great music just did not have like the attention on it because he didn't have like something a huge smash radio wise. This is kind of the thing.